Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, once wrote, "As Christian parents jump up and down and run around the church like maniacs, recruiters from the Church of Satan leading among the pews and playgrounds, looking and searching for Christian kids to beguile and to seduce." Adolf Hitler once said, "It's easy to conquer a nation and enslave a people. All you have to do is seduce and manipulate the youth." As Christian parents, we have to realize that the world and its master hates our children. As Christian parents, we have to realize that the world and its master doesn't want to see our sons educated in Ivy League schools, but rotting away in maximum security prisons. As Christian parents, we have to realize that the world and its master doesn't want our daughters married and raised in healthy Christian families, but molested, raped, and left for dead in some filthy back alley. In the world of gangs and organized crime, the way to hurt your enemy the most is to kill his children. And so Satan has waged all-out war, not only against your children and my children, but against all of God's children. The Bible says in Exodus 1:16 that when Moses was a boy, Satan, working through Pharaoh, murdered all the male children. The Bible says in Matthew 2:16 that when Jesus was born, Satan, working through King Herod, murdered all the children 2 years old and younger. In Juarez, Mexico, over 4,000 young women have been raped and murdered since 1990. Young girls in Asia are being sold into sex rings by their own parents. One official said, "There is a large market for girls 2 to 14. They are used as prostitutes and sex slaves. They are beaten, burned with cigars and cigarettes, and eventually we find them maimed or dead." It's a shame what these young men will do unto their own daughters. How to keep your kids safe in a dangerous, dangerous world. Jeremiah 9:21 declares, "For death is coming to our windows and is entered into our palaces, to kill our children from without and to murder the young men in the streets." As Christian parents, we tend to believe that if we go to church twice a week, join the choir, and attend the pastor's anniversary dinner, that everything in our children's lives will remain holy and unsoiled by society's woes. But the truth of the matter is this: 30% of all adolescent pregnancies occur among church-going teenagers. 45% of all Christian teenagers have admitted smoking pot and popping pills. 90% of those molested during the Catholic pedophile cases were children between the ages of 2 and 12 years old. 60% of gangbangers have admitted to grow up in church, stopped going as teenagers, and committed their lives to drugs, crime, and violence as adults. 50% of all atheists, agnostics, and Satanists admit that they quit believing in God while still teenagers involved in church or some other form of organized religion. 85% of all Christian teenagers admit that they come to church not to learn about Jesus, but to hook up with the opposite sex. And 98% of all evangelical teenagers admit they don't understand what the senior pastor is talking about. And what he says and what the church service is doing to them is irrelevant and outdated. How do you keep your kids safe in a dangerous world? How do you keep your kids safe in a dangerous world? The above mentioned are just a few statistics that depict the reality of the situation that our children go through on a daily basis. As Christian parents, we have to realize that our enemy roams about like a roaring lion, seeking and searching for young people to deceive and destroy. As Christian parents, we have to realize that our parental skills and our on-the-job training cannot prevent our teenage girls from getting pregnant at the age of 13. As Christian parents, we have to realize that our service in Sunday school class, our tithing, and our giving cannot prevent our sons from joining gangs and indulging in criminal and vagrant acts. As Christian parents, we have to realize that we have no power over our children to commit themselves to advanced education in the realms of higher learning. As Christian parents, we have to realize that the only one who has the power over our kids, their decision in life choices, is Christ, and Christ alone. For it is in Him that we live, we move, and we have our being. Acts 17:28. And then again in John 15:5 we read, for without Christ we can do nothing. As Christian parents, we have to realize that our children belong to God and not to us. As Christian parents, we have to realize that our kids would rather listen to their friends instead of listening to us. As Christian parents, we have to realize that outside of Christ, we have absolutely no control over our children and their decisions, for they are free moral agents. And as Christian parents, we have to realize that without prayer, biblical relevance, and godly and angelic protection, our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren don't have a chance. For if God doesn't protect the city, the watchers watch in vain. How do you protect your children in an ungodly world? As Christian parents, here are a few things we can do to keep our kids safe in a dangerous world. 1, give them to God. Realize that our children are not yours, but His. Colossians 1:16 declares, for by Him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, things visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created for Him and by Him. When we realize that our children belong exclusively to God, we then learn to trust God for their provisions and their protection. 2, deal with our issues before we pass them on to our children. Our children are a reflection of what they see in us. Remember, the fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree. Ezekiel 18:2, the fathers have eaten the grapes, the sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. How can we expect our children not to have issues when all they see us as parents? We're afraid to deal with our issues. We're afraid to deal with our problems. We go to church on Sunday, but after church we're cussing their mothers out. How can you expect your son, sir, not to be addicted to methamphetamines and cigarettes when you yourself are addicted? Deal with your issues before you pass them on to your children.